Welcome to the Doctoral Training Centre's Dissertation Workshop. This workshop is aimed primarily at our master's students, as it focuses primarily on the process of a master's dissertation, what you should go through, the processes that you should need to be aware of, some key tips, and then some of the frequently asked questions we get from students. Now, the Doctoral Training Centre does run dissertation training workshops at various points throughout the academic year, and of course you're more than welcome to attend those. The aim is that this short video will accompany the dissertation workshop slides that are available on our Blackboard module called Doctoral Training Centre. And therefore this will give you the opportunity to compare the written component and then also the verbal one now. So a dissertation is a compulsory requirement of our master's degree, as indeed of most master's degrees around the world. For a full-time student, the completion time is usually a 12-month period, and for part-time, 2 years. So in reality, that's how long the master's degree in its entirety takes. In order to do the dissertation, you must have completed all of your taught modules, and then you can be formally registered as a dissertation student, and I'll talk a little bit about that in more detail later on. So for a degree requirement, you must take your core modules, your concentration modules, and so you've fulfilled all of the taught components and passed all of the taught components. From that point on, you are then eligible to be registered as a dissertation student. So of course we have a bureaucratic process for this. This process is all very clearly outlined in our dissertation handbook and in the dissertation guidelines that are available on the Blackboard. A dissertation represents 60 credits of work. The word count varies by faculty, but it's somewhere in the 16 to 25,000 word range. And of course, talk to your faculty administrators and your dissertation supervisors for the specific number and nature of this. So, you've completed all your taught modules, you're therefore eligible. You need to submit a dissertation registration form and a dissertation intention form. And these are available through Blackboard or available through your administrator. These forms are relatively straightforward, but it's worth spending some time thinking about them because that will help the process down the line. Now, it's not essential that by the time you begin your dissertation you have a fully fledged idea or a fully fledged proposal. This is something that you can work with your supervisor to develop, but it's very, very helpful if you have an idea of an area or a subject or a theme that you are interested in doing. This is often from modules you've taken in the past, particular assignments you've done, things that you're interested in your professional career as well as your academic one. Our advice is that you talk to members of staff during your teaching process, during your assignments, get their feedback, try to develop possible dissertation ideas. This has the double benefit of not just helping you with the material, but also helping you potentially identify a supervisor. Now, if you can talk to a member of staff in advance and they can help you shape the idea, they're comfortable supervising, it's a project that makes sense for both of you to be involved with, then that can help speed up the process. On the dissertation forms, you can put the name of your preferred supervisor. It's usually better if you've already spoken to that member of staff in advance, because then you've got a head start on what the title looks like, the proposal, and those sort of details. Once you've submitted these forms, the faculty administration processes them, the coordinator checks them, they need to contact the member of staff to make sure that they are indeed eligible or willing to supervise your dissertation. Then it comes back and then you're notified and you're given a formal email of recognition of your status as a dissertation student. And from that point on, the clock effectively starts ticking, and you either have 6 months as a part-time or 8 months as, 6 months as a full-time or 8 months as a part-time student. And so you're able to work on the dissertation during your taught process, but primarily we allocate the time once you've finished the taught modules to get the dissertation finished. So once you've been assigned a supervisor, then your relationship with them begins. They are not there to proofread, they are not there to dictate your writing, they are not there to do the dissertation for you. Our job is to provide you guidance and support to help you shape your idea. Quite often we can give you advice on what we think is feasible, what we think is realistic, what we think is possible within the time and the resources that you have. Because you need to be considerate of, do you have access to the information, do you have the requisite resources, the skill set. You may have a phenomenally interesting question that's just not physically possible to achieve in the time frame. So these are sort of things that the dissertation supervisor can help with and provide you guidance along the way. The Doctoral Training Centre is obviously here to provide you training on particular skill sets that you might need, from interviewing to SPSS or NVivo for data analysis to how you actually write up different elements of the dissertation. So please do take advantage of what the British University in Dubai has to offer for you. Skipping to the end of the process, you would submit a final copy for review through Turnitin on Blackboard. You then get the feedback from that draft review, and then you submit a final copy on Blackboard. It's marked by your supervisor as the first marker, it's then second marked by another member of the faculty, and then sent to the external examiner in the UK for review. Then it goes through the final exam board, at which point the end of the process has happened. So, as I said, this video is to go alongside the PowerPoint presentation, so I'm not going to cover all of the slides in all the detail. What I'm going to do is talk you through the process and some of the frequently asked questions we get from students. So one of which is, well, how do I choose a dissertation topic? Now, I've talked about that in a little bit of detail, but is it something you're interested in? It's something you're going to need to do over a several-month period, and it's going to be ups and downs. You're going to have difficulty sometimes getting hold of data, getting people to respond, analysing, writing, referencing. All these things are tricky to do, so you want to pick something that you have a genuine interest, because that will give you the motivation throughout the process to continue. Don't be worried if you find it difficult at times. That's very, very normal. Okay, that's true for everybody. So, is the topic of interest to you? Is it of interest to your professional life, to your life post-academia, or if you're looking to continue in academia, is it maybe a subject you'd like to carry on for your PhD? That's always a valid option. My master's dissertation became my PhD thesis, and so it's relatively common within academia. Is it relevant? Is it significant? Is it of interest? We always get this question from students, well, how do I know if my work is original? It's a valid question and clearly very important. You're not expected to reinvent the wheel. Often originality, what is meant by that is taking an existing theory and applying a new case study, or comparing a case study or a theoretical review against something that already exists. So adding body of knowledge to something by looking at it in a different angle with a different perspective. We have the advantage, particularly in our part of the world, that there's relatively little research published on the UAE activity, but a lot of research published perhaps from other countries, which can make a good basis for a comparative analysis or a good basis to take an existing theory or methodological approach and add to the body of literature. And that's a perfectly valid response. For a lot of our students, of course, they are working at the same time, and so often a dissertation topic will be something that has direct relevance to their professional life. Again, perfectly valid, and these are things that you would discuss with your potential and then actual supervisor. Is it relevant to you? Is it interesting to you? These are very valid questions. And as I said before, get as much advice as you can on the research topic, how to shape it, why you want to do it. Ask yourself questions. Has it been done before? Is it interesting? Is it relevant? Is it valid? As in, can I physically do it? So, is it relevant? Is it original? Is it interesting to people? And can I achieve it? It's worth bearing in mind that very often the topic or the title you come up with at the beginning is very, very different from the dissertation that you finish at the end. This is also very, very normal, because the sort of dissertation moves along the way depending on the data that you have access to, the resources, the responses, etc., etc. But again, this is very normal, and as long as you keep this monitored by your supervisor, you'll be fine. In terms of the time plan of how you actually engage in your dissertation, there are standard approaches, as you'll see from the slides, which include coming up with a topic, research questions, going through a plan, looking at research methods, collecting your data, analysing your data, etc., etc. And different supervisors will have different preferences, and different timescales will also happen. So a lot of our students who do that over the summer often have to move their data collection earlier than would be the traditional process because they won't necessarily have access to their schools if they're in the Faculty of Education, or indeed their companies if there's a summer break coming up. And so that can happen. One of the key skills that you learn in your dissertation is flexibility, is that ability to adapt as things comes up. This is why we ask you to do a dissertation plan, because it's useful to have a framework. You don't have to stick to it completely, but it's worthwhile having a foundation that you can balance and sort of refer back to. So it's worthwhile thinking about what am I interested in, what questions am I looking to answer, so your research questions, what's driving your dissertation. Your research methodology is then what is most appropriate to where you want to go and the questions you want to ask. Your literature review is obviously associated with the topic area, both general and specific, that you're interested in. And then your data collection and data analysis naturally flow from those previous elements. So in the dissertation workshop slides, you'll see slides about the arrangement of chapters and what must be included, from the abstract through the introduction, literature review, methodology, results finding, discussion, conclusion, references and appendices. Not all dissertations will look exactly the same. Some will have subheadings. This is why we have a document on dissertation guidelines for you to follow. That gives you the idea about the structure, the formatting, the headings, etc., etc. Now for BUID dissertations, we require an abstract, and the abstract needs to be in both English and Arabic. And if you have difficulty with either of those two languages, then this is something that you can obviously get help with. Clearly, we expect all of our students to be able to write in English, and the Doctoral Training Centre is not a proofreading centre, nor are your supervisors proofreaders. But there are areas in where you can get that type of support, and you can contact the Doctoral Training Centre for advice about that process. An abstract is included because it's the sort of thing that helps search engines. It helps search. We put our dissertations when they're finished, both in the library but also with online access. And an abstract is something, a condensed version of what your dissertation is about, which helps other researchers search for string words or key themes or topics of interest. So as I said, the slides that we have take you through what is an introduction, how do you identify research questions, how you write your methodology, your literature review findings, etc. And I'm not going to go into that in detail because that's not the purpose of this video. That's what that training course is for. What I would highlight is that it's very important that you, the student, take responsibility for this. It is your own work, it's your own voice, it's your own idea. Our job, as I said at the beginning, is to help shape it. It's not to do it for you, it's not to give you the answers, it's not to give you even the questions. That's clearly something we can discuss with you and help you develop by yourself or in conjunction, but it's not something that we dictate to you. Be mindful, please, of the dissertation guidelines and read the documentation that's available on Blackboard. Have a time plan and a chart and communicate with your supervisor. If you have questions, please ask them. It's always helpful if you've thought about your issues first and you can go with genuine questions about, look, I've tried this, I'm not understanding what's happening, can you please give me some guidance? If you go to your supervisor and just say, I don't know what to do, I've got no idea, I haven't thought about it, it's much more difficult for us to help you craft and shape a plan moving forwards. But we have no problem talking to you about issues, and please be honest about your lack of understanding if it's true, or your difficulties, because they are to be expected and again very, very normal. Be aware of the submission guidelines. I appreciate that this is the beginning of the process, and so this is something you're possibly not worrying about until the end, but do be aware and do discuss those with your supervisor. So we get some of the common challenges and problems that students face. Often difficulty picking a topic, difficulty getting started. I feel like I need to read, and I don't actually know when to start writing. Again, that's a problem. The strange thing about a dissertation is that the topic starts out being this big and actually ends up being this big. And the challenge is getting from there to there and then going ahead with the writing. It's very difficult to achieve in the final dissertation everything you think you want to do when you start the process. Again, this is why you have a plan, this is why you read well, but you also try to link all your reading against your central research questions, and all in mind, is this taking me where I need to go? Is this central question what I want to answer? So the beginning bit is always, I'm reading around a general topic trying to find an idea. Once I've found an idea, I can then shape where I want to go, and that's the process that supervisors can help you. We'll often ask you to maybe come up with a 1 or 2 page proposal for your ideas, because this helps you clarify and narrow down by saying, why is it interesting, why is it relevant, can I do it, and of what value does it have to the research? And that sort of gives you, and if you can't answer those questions, then maybe you should move on to another topic. Balancing the workload is always difficult, so we often advise about almost treating this as if it's a module in itself, setting aside specific time to work on your dissertation. And again, having a realistic time plan, what you plan to achieve over the next 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, etc. And do talk to your supervisors. Don't hope the problem will solve itself, because it's very easy for a month to disappear. So if you do have problems, ask people. Our job as supervisors is to be academic guidance, to give you advice on suitability, feasibility, scale, scope, as I mentioned before, support about ethical issues, research methodology, structuring, presentation, that type of stuff. And that's both from the supervisors, from the Doctoral Training Centre, and also from the written material that's available online. We're not a spoon feeder, as I said before, but it should be a relationship of open communication. So it's your responsibility to keep in touch with your supervisor, and it's our responsibility to keep in touch with you. We should make arrangements to meet on a regular basis as fits the diary of both parties. And we obviously expect you to submit the documentations as needed, update your supervisor if you have issues or difficulties, and to be able to work independently, because it's good to get advice, but it is your independent work and it's yours. You own it. So we often get questions about, well, how many times can I or should I or do I need to meet your supervisor? Well, that's an interesting question, and it sort of changes by student to student. So I've had students where I've met them every single week. I've had students where I've met them once every 2 months, but there's been email communication. We appreciate it's not always easy for students to come onto campus. When they are on campus, they're obviously in class. And so talk to your supervisor and build the understanding of that communication relationship. Are emails fine? Maybe Skype calls, phone calls, face-to-face meetings. It's relatively flexible depending on how it works. Meet your supervisor as much as is necessary in agreement with them. We frequently get asked, well, how many words should the introduction have, and how many words should the methodology section? It's not a question that can really be easily answered. The dissertation guidelines and the structural documents that we have give you a breakdown on what they should look like and what should be included. But this is not something that's absolutely prescriptive. And we will never say you must have X number of words in the introduction and Y number in the conclusion. It doesn't tend to work that way. And so you need to look at the overall body of the work and how many words account that you have total. And then talk to your supervisor about the different components. It's always worth writing, because it helps you with your self-confidence. Get a chapter written, and then you can go back and edit it, cut it down, or add to it on a later occasion. So it's just, try not to treat the dissertation as a 16 or 20,000 word massive document. Think about it about these little or smaller building blocks of an introduction, of a literature review, of a methodology, of your findings. Treat them as smaller essays, smaller assignments, and work on them in view of the whole context, but as they are in smaller pieces, so that you can build them up. Because then you do one, you can look back and think, I've achieved something, now I can move on to the next one. A small piece of advice that is always very, very helpful, we think, is that because you'll tend to write each chapter or section in isolation and not start at the beginning and write straight through to the end, please pay attention to editing when you finish the full document. Make sure that the chapters link to each other. A very good way to do this is A, leave the introduction till the end, because then you're introducing something that exists. That can be helpful. And also at the end of each chapter and the beginning of each chapter, write a little end summary and link that's happening next. Because that way for the reader, the introduction, they read a chapter, there's a small summary, what's going to happen next. Then it's what happened before, they read the chapter, summary, what's happening next. And it's sort of just a connector bridge between the writing that can be very, very useful. We get frequent questions about referencing and plagiarism, and people aren't sure how to necessarily handle this. By the time you've got to your dissertation, you've obviously completed all of your written components and all of your assignments, so you really should have a better idea of this. But the Doctoral Training Centre runs referencing workshops on how to avoid plagiarism. We have tests online as to how to avoid plagiarism and how to reference correctly, so please take advantage of all of these types of things. So, to summarise, a dissertation is your own work. Our job is to help you achieve what it is that you think is interesting and worthwhile. How do you know what's worthwhile and interesting? Read. Talk to people, think of ideas, bounce ideas back and forth between colleagues, members of staff, your workplace. Then read literature. If you identified a gap, is this something that hasn't previously existed? Do you think it's of interest? Do you think it's relevant? Do you think it's achievable? And if you can answer yes to all of these questions, start to put together a 1 or 2 page proposal even while you're doing your assignments and your taught modules. Go and talk to members of staff and get ahead of the process. I'm not expecting, nor are we expecting you to have written your dissertation before you start, but if you thought about it, it will accelerate the process of the beginning of the dissertation and allow you to move into the proper literature review and the data analysis that can often take the time. Dissertations are not easy, and they're not meant to be easy. They're a very significant research component of a postgraduate degree. So we take them very seriously, and we hope you do too. We hope you enjoy them because it's freeing to be able to think of a topic for yourself, by yourself, that you believe is relevant, link it to literature, and achieve something that you haven't yet done before, which is a significant piece of research activity. We will do everything we can to support you along this journey, so please do take advantage of the workshops that we run, the video resources we will continue to put up, and the written material. Talk to your supervisors, talk to people, get some ideas, plan some ideas, and then good luck, and we wish you every success. Thank you.